Good morning and good evening. Let us begin with the study circle. And we are currently reading the compilation Looking from Within, a compilation by Dr. A.S. Dalal, which helps us, guides us how we can look from within, where we usually just know how to look outside and comprehend our lives and everything around it. So let us just take 1 minute to gather ourselves, to ingather ourselves, breathing in and breathing out as the breath, with the breath, in the breath, staying in the present moment for these few moments. Invoking grace, invoking the divine's presence and guidance as we go through the words of Mother and Sri Aurobindo with an aspiration and a prayer that they show us more light so that we can not only just read, understand, but also live these words that we read. Thank you. Yeah. So we were reading this passage from Sri Aurobindo from Synthesis of Yoga. So it's my understanding that we had covered it till the highlighted parts. And this is what we have to take this time. Last time we had a discussion about spirituality and religion. So that was very interesting. So hopefully today too we'll learn more. So if anybody has the capacity, if they can read this for us and then we'll take it up. I will.
Yes, ma'am. Should I continue from that first line or from where you highlighted?
You choose what do you want to start with wherever.
No, I'll just go with the highlighted.
Okay.
Mata. All these forces the spiritual seeker grows aware of in himself and finds all around him and has to struggle and combat incessantly to be rid of their grip and dislodge the long entrenched mastery they have exercised over his own being as over the environing human existence. I'll just read this one more time, please. All these forces the spiritual seeker grows aware of in himself and finds all around him and has to struggle and combat incessantly to be rid of their grip and dislodge the long entrenched mastery they have exercised over his own being as over the environing human existence. The difficulty is great, for their hold is so strong, so apparently invincible, that it justifies the disdainful dictum which compares human nature to a dog's tail, for straighten it never so much by force of ethics, religion, reason, or any other redemptive effort. It returns in the end always to the crooked curl of nature. And so great is the whim, the clutch of that more agitated life will, so immense the peril of its passions and errors, so subtly insistent or persistently invasive, so obstinate up to the very gates of heaven, the fury of its attack, or the tedious obstruction of its obstacles, that even the saint and the yogin cannot be sure of their liberated purity or their trained self mastery against its intrigue or its violence. Thank you. It's your opinion.
Yeah, thank you. Jatin. So just to remind us, we were reading about the vital forces and how should we read this again, the whole thing? We have a reference of what we were talking about where it says all these forces the spiritual seeker grows aware of. How there is a push and a pull, and how, religion makes it a little bit more understandable. So we want to follow that. That's what we were reading. So if we need to read it again, please let me know. Otherwise, taking it up from here. All these
Yes,
forces. Yeah, should
sorry.
we read?
Yeah, I think that is where we stopped last time, no, ma'am, because we're about the religion, about aspiration and grace.
Hmm.
Yeah, if you can give a little bit summary on
Yeah,
the
so we can
last.
just read it again. We have discussed it already.
Yeah,
So we can just slowly read it again to give us a recap because the language is a bit hard, right? One can go
okay.
around it properly. Yeah. So the title is the spiritual view of the ordinary life. Like how do we see the spirituality or the spiritual view? And anybody who's willing can slowly read this passage till where we read it today, the forces.
I'll do it then. The spiritual view of the ordinary life, a principle of dark and dull inertia, is at its base. All are tied down by the body and its needs and desires to a trivial mind, petty desires and emotions, an insignificant repetition of small, worthless functionings, needs, cares, occupations, pains, pleasures that lead to nothing beyond themselves and bear the stamp of an ignorance that knows not its own why and whither. This physical mind of inertia believes in no divinity other than its small earth gods. It aspires perhaps to a greater comfort, order, pleasure, but asks for no uplifting and no spiritual deliverance. At the center, we meet a stronger will of life with a greater gusto, but it is a blinded demon, a perverted spirit, and exults in the very elements that make of life a striving turmoil and an unhappy imbroglio. It is the soul of human or titanic desire, clinging to the garish color, disordered poetry, violent tragedy, or stirring melodrama of of the mixed flux of good and evil, joy and sorrow, light and darkness, heady rapture and bitter torture. It loves these things and would have more and more of them, or even when it suffers and cries out against them, can accept or joy in nothing else. It hates and revolts against higher things, and in its fury would trample, tear, or crucify any diviner power that has the presumption to offer to make life pure, luminous, and happy, and snatch from its lips the fiery brew of that exciting mixture. Another will in life there is that is ready to follow the ameliorating ideal mind and is allured by its offer to extract some harmony, beauty, light, nobler order out of life. But this is a smaller part of the vital nature and can be easily overpowered by its more violent or darker, duller yoke comrades. Nor does it readily lend itself to a call higher than that of the mind, unless that call defeats itself, as religion usually does, by lowering its demand to conditions more intelligible to our obscure vital nature.
Yeah, thank you, Deepa. So basically, it sounds very dark and dull, but just as a crux, what they are saying is that we basically, there's something in us which has an affinity towards, there is some inertia, there is some laziness, there is some pull towards the drama of everyday life. And the vital, which gives us power, again, it craves more for, you know, again, it says, right, like different tragedies, poetries, colors, like it needs some melodrama. We might not agree. It might be hard for us to accept that why would I want drama? I want peace. I want simplicity. And yet he's talking about, the human nature, that the vital in me craves for that. So there is and so that was this one. And then another will in life, there is that is ready to follow, right? The one that can improve, transcend the regular mind. And but that again is mostly overpowered because this is just a smaller part of the vital nature and can be easily overpowered by more violent, darker, duller comrades. So, for us to readily lend ourselves to a call higher than that of a mind is very tough. And this is where, we had ended last time that religion usually, because it defines things for us and it gives us some discipline, which is great. But usually it takes us away from the higher, but it does give us a structure, and that is what is easier for us to understand. And yeah, so that's where we had ended. So now, where we had read from, like Jagan, what he had read was starting from all these forces. So all these forces that we just spoke above. So he's saying that all these forces, the spiritual seeker grows aware of in himself. Firstly, we don't even know and we are ruled and we are puppeted. But slowly, as we become a bit more aware, when things become a bit more painful, we can't continue with the way we have been living. So, all these forces now, the spiritual seeker grows aware of in himself and finds all around him and has to struggle and combat incessantly to be rid of their grip and dislodge the long entrenched mastery they have exercised over his own being as over the environing human existence. So, from complete denial, blindness, to seeing some drama in other people, we slowly start realizing that there is something in me which is attracted to inertia. There's something in me which is attracted to these vital, ups and downs, these dramas. Just one second. Yeah, sorry.
When I'm reading this, I feel like it's being written about me, where I'm feeling ashamed to say it, but yeah, I feel like my life is stuck in all these desires and drama, and when there is a lot of pain and you're disappointed, then you want to go away from this and you think, okay, now I want to reach the higher purpose of life. You're aware of it. You know there is something that you need to do, and yet you again get dragged at the slightest change in the situation, which is more suited, more favorable towards again going back to the old way of life, because that's your comfort. Anything new is going to be uncomfortable for yourself also and for the people around you also. And while you're still aware of, like exactly how it mentioned here about the higher ideals and how yet it gets overpowered, um, it's as though somebody is today writing about me, exactly where I'm stuck.
Yeah, so this is like I said, according to him, this is the journey of a human, right? A human who's had enough, who has some, more consciousness than the ordinary grind of everyday life, who's looking for more meaning, maybe, or is fed up of the regular ups and downs. And then he wants to, go out and seek, and yet here it's saying it's a bit tough because we keep following back to the older patterns, which you just shared, which is true for all of. Yeah. So all these forces, the seeker grows aware of in himself. That's the first step, that, oh yes, I have it. I'm not one. I'm many. A part of me wants to go to for that desire. A part of me is content. A part of me is, happy. Another part of me is sad about the same happening. All these forces the spiritual seekers grows aware of in himself and finds all around him, and has to struggle and combat incessantly, like non-stop, this struggle and this combat between the new and the old, between what should be and what has been, between, the shubh, the auspicious, and the habit, the norm. It keeps happening to be rid of their grip. So we have to fight, we have to struggle to get rid of the grip of the past, our habits, our patterns, our impulses, dislodge the roots, the long entrenched mastery they have exercised over his own being as over the environing human existence. So both within me and without, two that are one. So for this mastery, one has to keep fighting, keep looking, keep wondering, what is happening and how am I being ruled. And we see this both outside and within us. First, we might just see all the bad outside, but then we slowly start realizing everything is inside me too. So taking it further, it says the difficulty is great, for their hold is so strong, so apparently invincible, that it justifies the disdainful dictum which compares human nature to a dog's tail. So, I mean, this is so difficult to get rid of the old and to take up the new. The grip is so strong, invincible, as if one cannot win over it. That, again, I think it was Sri Vivekananda who had used this comparison, right? Comparing human nature to a dog's tail. That because of this, we are comparing human nature to a dog's tail. For straighten it never so much by force of ethics, religion, reason, or any other redemptive effort. It returns in the end always to the crooked curl of nature. Somehow the nature wins over over the higher powers that we have, the eternity that we have. We keep making ourselves smaller and smaller and limited because our brain, our mind understands limited. So, and we don't like not understanding. So, we keep limiting ourselves for comfort, for familiarity, for habitual patterns. And this goes on till a very long. And so great is the vim, the punch, the clutch of that more agitated life will. So immense the peril of its passions and errors, so subtly insistent or persistently invasive, so obstinate up to the very gates of heaven, the fury of its attack. I mean, look at the choice of words. The punch, the clutch, the agitated life will, the perils of its passions and errors. So subtly insistent or persistently invasive, so obstinate, stubborn, up to the very gates of heaven, the fury of its attack or the tedious obstruction of its obstacles, that even the saint and the yogin cannot be sure of their liberated purity or their trained self mastery against its intrigue or its violence. I remember I'd seen a documentary on Buddha on Netflix, I don't know, around 15 years back. And there too, they had shown that, when he was sitting, in his meditation under that Bodhi tree, till the very end, he was kept on promising that, forget what you're doing, take this power, take this riddhi, take this siddhi, larger than life things. He was offered and offered and offered and offered, ki, oh, stop your stubbornness, stop your hut, ki, oh, you want to know more. And so much was thrown at him that he didn't look at. So it's very, very reflected that how we first have to go through, this pendulum like movement. And it has to be so much, and we have to be, I don't know, to be able to see it so much that finally, once when we decide, okay, that's it, now done, which keeps happening for years and years, then it's like no matter what comes, we don't get misdirected, we don't get tempted, we don't want to grasp or clutch. ऐसा लगता है कि that's it, बहुत हो गया. Now let me just, get over the trivial, the transitory, the glitter and the glamour. Let me now not sell myself short of what I am capable of getting. Be sharing. One can never stop and think that mera ho gaya, like I am done, I am all set. Even if there is a saint or a yogi, they cannot be sure of the liberated purity. They always have to be on their guard. I think there's a very beautiful doha also of Kabir ji that, हम तो तब तक भय करें जब तक पिंजर में सांस. Like till I have breath in my body, I have to be on guard because you never know when an attack comes and again you fall back into the old patterns. I think it's good to know that this is how it works, not to get boggled down by it or how hard it is. But of course, Sri Aurobindo has said it and he himself has conquered all these. So he has shown the way, and so have so many masters and mystics. So we must at least begin by acknowledging, accepting, so that we are ready to release and move towards the new. Yeah. So now,
Ma'am,
yeah,
sorry, I sort of lost reception. There's a word, a couple of two words, disdainful dictum. Maybe you may have explained it. Can you please explain it? What the word is?
disdainful Jagan is like condescending, like critical, like not in a good spirit, disdainful, pulling somebody down. And dictum is like saying. And you said there were more or just this?
No, just that. Understood.
Okay.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask about the Buddhas that you were mentioning that constantly he was offered something else. So this was his mind playing that game. And what was it offering instead of what?
That's a great question. So basically, it is said that, how when you have somebody in your control and then they start realizing that, no, I don't want to be under your rule. So the person who has controlled you or the any force that has controlled you, they don't let you go so easy. You remember in the heroic heart session once when we were discussing about gods and the earth gods, there was this story that Jetsunmala had shared that one of the nuns who was promised to one of those gods, right? Like they tried so hard and ultimately they had to send her back. So nobody likes to leave their control. So right now we are controlled by, say, the Maya, lot of different forces. They don't want truth to be revealed. So I think again through our mind, the desire mind, how it's like usually captured, and like how they talk about that arrow of Kamdev and all these things that are happening through our mind, but using our mind and then our vital, our mind, and then we are made to be puppeted. And then it said, I don't know where we were reading, I think maybe in Savitri, that then they laugh, right? Then they have fun while we are being puppeted. So yeah, so it was just shown that he's sitting in a samadhi and he's like, totally sure that he would not stop what he's doing till he attains nirvana. And then lot of things were sent his way. How lot of, I don't know if you've read that book. It's very famous, the autobiography of a yogi. So in that, they also speak about a lot of siddhi that some people have. Okay, they are here and then next second they'll be there and they could get anything like sitting in India, they can get shoes from US, the one that the sadhak want, small things. They don't appear to be small and yet they are quite small. So, and because greed can act anytime, right? So we are ready that, okay, let me forget if I'm getting this, let me get this Riddhi Siddhi. So this I have personally even heard from people who are big meditators and who have, crossed a certain path, that these things they are given and you have to say no. Or obviously you can take them and then you have to stop your seeking and your journey. But yeah, I don't know that answer your question because I was.
Yeah, I think I can relate to the fact that how these temptations exist in our lives also, right? When you think you're so done with this mundane living and you think you're ready for that next step, but then something is thrown in your way again to make sure that you stay in this circle of desires and family life and aspirations. Um, so, I mean, for Buddha, obviously, it was much higher things that were offered. We are easily tempted. So, yeah, it totally resonates, and I can understand what, I mean, on a larger, higher level for Buddha, how it would have been.
So I think if I look at my own temptations, right, even right now, my own desires, or there is some greed somewhere, some wanting, some level of comfort, right, with what I have. So I can that shows me a lot already, right? That how one gets again distracted, again, somebody promises something, some situation, some achievement, some role, some title, some paycheck. It promises me something, and I leave what they are, what where I want to head or I think I should head, and I go, okay, acha, acha, maybe I need more. So it's very good that it happens, so that when finally I am, there, I don't get tempted so easily, or rather not get tempted at all, because the things that are thrown my way would be pretty big. So I think this oscillation, this back and forth at our state is really good. It really helps in attaining that solidarity, paripakvata, they call it, becoming stabilized in one's being, in one's faith. Yeah.
It is very revealing when it's said that how we are happy with our small earth gods. And I do that a lot of times. Like, I think, oh, I'm praying, I'm saying the shlokas, the mantras. So I kind of delude myself into thinking that, okay, I'm on the right path, I'm spiritually growing. But it is just that then at the end of the day. And I kind of now understand a little more in terms of this is a far more richer and higher thing that Sri Aurobindo is telling us to achieve, to rise above these even these practices, these not usual rituals and practices that we are doing, into achieving something more bigger for humanity and humankind.
I think honestly, I start with myself, right? So achieving something more bigger for myself, right? Because I am capable and I deserve, and that is what I don't know, ideally should be. But I get so distracted and so enamored by everything around me that I just, again, I don't know, sell myself really short, like sell myself for pennies when I'm worth, I don't know, diamonds. And yet I'm not ready to give up those pennies for diamonds, because it feels कि pennies तो दिख रही हैं, है ना, मेरे हाथ में हैं, I have them. To lose them for the diamonds that may or may not be there, and that is why I think when we read these texts, the life stories of various masters and mystics, it helps, because it, again, you have this thing that, oh, he also did it, okay, that one also did it, and this one also did it. So it helps us in having some kind of assertion, and because we need that. We can't walk in darkness, and yet, for us, all of us, there comes a time when we must walk, and we do. And then, when we have these as treasures, that okay, I know he did this, I know, so that helps. So I think the passage is explained further, and I think that's what it would be, because I guess it was a little tough one. Let's see what is said. So if anybody is willing, they can read, otherwise I'll.
I can read if no one else is reading.
Hmm? Hmm? Okay, Soham wants to read.
Oh, perfect.
It seems to me that when you begin to see things in this way, when they appear to you as they are described here, you are already close, very close to the solution. The worst of it is that generally the whole
Material reality
seems to be the only reality, and
everything
everything which is not that seems altogether secondary, and the right of the material
consciousness
and the consciousness to rule, guide, or
lies
life to dominate
dominate
all the rest is justified to such an extent that if someone tries to challenge the
sacrosanct
authority, he is considered half mad or extremely dangerous.
Yeah, we'll stop. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Such a sweet, innocent voice. It was good to hear.
So what we were reading, like I was saying, that it seemed a bit, you feel a bit helpless, right, when you read that passage, although it's very revelatory. So here it is being said, I think Mother probably is saying it, that it seems to me that when you begin to see things in this way, when they appear to you as they are described here, you are already close, very close to the solution. So that means you're realizing where you are, you're realizing how the body is doing, the mind is doing, the vital is playing you. So you're already very close to the solution. So that's a lot of solace. The worst of it is that generally the whole material reality seems to be the only reality. And everything which is not that seems altogether secondary. I think that's very important. That the worst of what we have read, that the whole material reality, whatever I can touch, whatever I can see, the solidity of it feels really solid. And these experiences that we have, these impulses, these sixth sense that we have, something in me tells me, oh, that's secondary. This is my real life. Well, how am I doing? What am I earning? Where am I living? What is my title? This is real. And everything else, no matter how much I'm finding beauty or love or revelations in it, I feel that's secondary, that's not real. So that is something that needs to change. So the worst of it is that generally the whole material reality seems to be the only reality, and everything which is not that seems altogether secondary. And the right of that material consciousness to rule, guide, organize life, to dominate all the rest is justified to such an extent that if someone tries to challenge this sacrosanct authority, he is considered half mad or extremely dangerous. So when we challenge this material consciousness that rules us, guides us, dominates us, we could be considered mad or dangerous if we're not following the dictates of the norms of how things are done. So it further says that it seems to
It seems to me one must It seems to me one must still go very long way to consider mental life
material life
in the way of Sri Aurobindo. This describes it here, and I am quite convinced that if one feels it like that, he
sees
sees it like that. As he describes it, one is very,
very
close
close
to remembered it.
the remedy. That's thank you. So again, just a reiteration that it seems to me one must still go a very long way to consider material life in the way Sri Aurobindo had described it here. You know how he said that how everything when we begin feels that again, this principle of dark and dull inertia is at its base. All are tied down by the body and its needs and desires to a trivial mind, petty desires and illusions, insignificant repetitions of worthless functioning. So, all this, physical mind of inertia. So, all this further saying that even if we see this, one must still go a very long way. And yet, I'm quite convinced that if one feels it like that, sees it like that, as he had described it, one is very, very close to the remedy. Yeah. No, no, it's a bigger passage. If anybody is willing, they can read the whole thing and we can take it. Yeah, Jagan, you wanted to read it. Do you still have the capacity?
Yes, ma'am, sure. So it's starting from it is only. Sure. Uh, yes. Uh, it is only elite natures, those who have already had a contact with a higher reality, with something of the divine consciousness, who feel earthly existence in that way. And when one can become so fully conscious of all these weaknesses and stupidities of the outer consciousness, all these falsehoods of so called material knowledge and so called physical laws, the so called necessities of the body, the reality of one's needs. If one begins to see how very false, stupid, illusory, obscure, foolish all this is, one is truly very close to the solution. That is the impression I had while reading this. I had the feeling that to see things in this way, one must have already climbed to a very high peak, and that one is at the gates of liberation. If you can read this passage again and be convinced of its reality and its absolute truth, well, that is already a great step. The mother. Ma'am, I would like to read that's the first paragraph starting from end. And when one can become so fully conscious of all these weaknesses and stupidities of the outer consciousness, all these falsehoods of so-called material knowledge and so-called physical laws, the so-called necessities of the body, the reality of one's needs, If one begins to see how very false, stupid, illusory, obscure, foolish all this is, one is truly very close to the solution. Thank you.
Yeah. Again, I guess this is very simple, doesn't really need any clarification, but like how Mother says, that when we start becoming conscious of our weaknesses, stupidity, we might not like these words, but she's so kind when she's saying it like this. Of the outer consciousness, all these falsehoods of so called material knowledge, so called physical laws, so called necessities of the body, the reality of one's needs. If one begins to see how very false, stupid, illusory, obscure, foolish all this is, one is truly very close to the solution. So I might not like it, it might hit my ego that how can these words be used? And yet, for the things that we sell ourselves, or the we waste our lives, or we keep sticking to our stubbornnesses, our grasp, our, I don't know, habits and what we are used to. When one realizes what one is giving up to keep holding on to what one is holding on to, one would themselves say that that was not very smart of me. But of course, there is this illusion, there is this Maya, which kind of blinds us. But if we are here, if we can see how this is being played, even while we are being played, we can see we are being played. One is truly very close to the solution. Again, she repeats that when I read this, I had this feeling that one must have already climbed to a very high peak and that one is at the gates of liberation. If you can read this passage and be convinced of its reality and its absolute truth, this is already a great samadhi.
Why is it that our mind still tries to hold us back? What is the purpose of the mind doing that? So your inner self is aware that you need to grow, that this is not, you don't want to, it gives you the message that you shouldn't go back into that loop of desires and wantings and attachments. And yet the mind gives you these few temptations constantly to keep you in that loop. Um, and you prefer to go that way instead of what that inner voice is telling you. Uh, what is the purpose of this mind and why is it doing that?
I think there's a lot of reasons. It's like, firstly, I think, not firstly, just me, I am saying this firstly, that there's some greed. I mean, at the bottom of almost everything that I'm holding on to or trying to preserve, I'm getting something. Some comfort, some assurance, some acceptance in the society. I have images of what my life must look like, and I'm conforming to those images, although maybe internally there could be nothing much. And yet, the outside, it appears to be picture perfect. And since I like perfection, I like beauty, I like harmony, so even if it's outwardly appearing to be like that, it gives me some solace, and there's something in me which says कि हाँ ठीक ही चल रहा है. Look at others, look at their lives. Oh my God, horrible. Mine is at least not that bad, right? So mine is at least not that bad के चक्कर में we don't go for what it can be. So that is one, that greed. And secondly, I think habits. Something, this habit is really strong. If I'm used to something certain, some certain ways, it feels very cruel. These habits, these patterns, our emotions, our expectations, they become us. And when we are told to leave something, it's like, our skin is being removed from our body. It's actually that hard. If I have to take something, go in the opposite direction of where I have been going, if I've always followed the norms and the dictates of family, society, and suddenly if I've been told that नहीं नहीं अगर कुछ ऊपर करना है तो अपनी सुनो, listen to your inner voice. Firstly तो इतने distracted होते हैं कि सुनाई नहीं देती, और सुनाई देते हैं तो विश्वास ही नहीं करते कि is that true, because it appears to be not very reasonable. It appears to me mostly taking me in the opposite direction of where my intelligence, so long has taken me. So I think this habit also has a lot of things. And then, there's a atavisms, right? Like how there are things in my genes, my cells of my body. My brain is wired to be a certain way since I was a child. Or my ancestors, how I've been carrying their trauma, their desires. So it goes much deeper than the eye can see. And yet एक बार जब समझ आ गया कि करना है, one begins, then these go, I mean, if one starts doing it, looking at things more sincerely, with sincerity and honesty, factually, removing these things aside, keeping these things aside, trying to see things for what they are, you do get through them quite nicely. And yet the hold, I remember my father says this, like I think it's from some Upanishads, like how Maya acts. That okay, you have maybe tasted 10 different kind of mangoes. And you are like, I am done. I don't want more mangoes. I've seen I don't like mangoes. And you turn your back toward the world. So it says that this is how Maya acts, that it will grip you again from your neck. Gireban se again, it will grip. Ki kaha ja raha hai? Look at the 11th variety of the mango. You haven't tried that. उससे मिलेगा तुझे कुछ, and then I'm like, okay, हो सकता है उससे मिल जाए. So I come back and I try it. Kind of, it's like sometimes I feel as if, I mean, the distractions, the temptations, the rewards, the prizes, they are made so big and so, like how in Lord of Rings, it's like, my precious, the golem keeps saying, I don't know if you've seen that movie, that my precious, it's giving him nothing, right? And yet that grip, that change in his eyes, that evil thing in his body and face, and how it has destroyed him. And yet he's holding on, that my precious, my precious. There's no reason for it, right? It's just different forces. So when something in me, wakes up, when something in me wants to be more, see more, become more, knowing that I am more, then slowly the grip, slowly, because how he said in the passage that the grip is so strong, but once I begin, then there is no turning back. And again, it just depends on कि कितना I go here and there and here and there. And yet the victory is certain. So that is for sure. And yes, lot of, and I'm sure there would be more sharings. I mean, if I'm sure we would have more reflections at why it happens. Please do share if you can think of more things.
Yeah, um, for me, a constant practice and an aspiration, is to just come out of myself. Just step out of myself and watch myself. The reason I say this is, um, if ma'am, if I can, if you can open that passage again, please.
Yeah.
So where it says,
Should I go up or down?
down, a little bit down. Thank you. I think the passage was by mother. if the
Yeah.
last year.
Okay, okay.
Yes, it says, and when one can become fully conscious of these weaknesses and stupidities and outer consciousness and falsehoods, and when I'm the reason I want to step out and to watch myself is I find these, this the lack of consciousness, the falsehood, the material thing, and the foolishness, obscurity, illusory. I find these are the jackets I wear, one upon the other, and to such a point and for such long periods that these jackets feel like my own skin. I think that okay, this is how my skin is. My skin has layers, and I'm born with these layers. But the naked truth is that this is not me. But to see this, I need to step out of myself. And every time I try to step out of myself, this pulls me back. It says, no, इसको कैसे उतारोगे, ये तो तुम्हारा ही है. And ये हर बार मतलब in the last 6 months, I don't know how many times I tried to take this jacket off, and how many times this jacket all almost like it's having a life of its own. It's pulling me back, and it's choking me sometimes. And it's choking me and scaring me that without me you cannot live, either live with me or die with me. So I think until the point I really step out and just watch myself, then I can see कि अरे तूने इतने जैकेट्स पहन लिए, ये तो तू है ही नहीं, इसके पीछे तू कुछ और है. और जब तक तेरे पे जैकेट्स होंगे तब तक तू रोते रहेगा. मतलब इट फील्स लाइक जितना भी मांगता हूँ वो मिल रहा है, फिर भी उसमें भी मतलब खुल के हंस नहीं पा रहा हूँ. तो मतलब सब मिल तो रहा है, बट again by coming back to the same example, these jackets, they are putting me in a different lifestyle. They're showing me a different world that is not even mine. So that's what I could understand from reading this.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. I think another thing is we are scared of change. Like there is this underlying fear for change, and it's very strange that if you ever come across, say, people who have suffered a lot, even maybe domestic violence or very severe cases of violence and suppression and all, still, when you ask them that what took you this long, 10 years, 12 years, 20 years, so the answer is that I know I was suffering, I know it wasn't a good place, but at least I know where I was. That gave me a sense of comfort. ये दुनिया है मुझे पता है मेरी, बट खराब है मुझे पता है, पिटाई हो रही है, ये हो रहा है, बट एटलीस्ट आई नो हाउ टू हैंडल दिस, आई नो हाउ टू व्हाट टू एक्सेप्ट, कहाँ तक जाएगा मुझे पता है. बट द वर्ल्ड सीम्स scary. It seems, the unknown seems scary, the future seems scary, and that stops us. The scare, the fear of the unknown, the fear of the new. Because again, like they were saying in the passage, the material seems very real, right? जो मेरे को है मेरे साथ में, जो comforts हैं, जो assurances हैं, जो relations हैं, they are very real. It feels कि हाँ यही तो है, यही तो है. And one has to take a leap in the darkness. One has to take a leap in faith कि पता ही नहीं है कि कौन है, खाली हाथ है, nobody is holding your hand. Although right now also nobody is holding the hand. And yet it feels कि हाँ हाँ पकड़ लेंगे, जरूरत पड़ेगी तो ऐसा क्या है. But when those hands stop giving you comfort or any kind of support, then it becomes easier to walk ahead. And but yeah, fear definitely is one of the biggest things that stops us.
I think there's also the fear, like, for example, um, I'm very happy to think that my role is only to make matar paneer or butter chicken in the house. Versus what if I leave that behind? Versus what if I leave my kids? They're grown up. They don't require me as much. I leave that behind and go to a world that my inner voice is calling me for in terms of service to others. And what if that also is disappointing? Just as this life is disappointing somewhere, because there is that bird trapped within you who feels so unfulfilled, unaccomplished with what you're doing. You think, What would happen at the most? They would not have butter chicken, they would have bread and omelette by themselves. But what is it that is stopping me? Then I think it is the fear of the unknown. It's the fear that what if this voice that is telling you to do something, you end up doing that, you go for that service. And there also you see probably, and it's happened to so many people, they go to for these NGOs, these organizations, and what they see over there is also petty politics. They see there is a power struggle there also to reach the top post and where the funds go. And this is the fear that if you reach a place and you again come back to only the dark realities of life, and you've given up, you've decided to give up, what you have, the comfort, and then you come back defeated back to that again point one. I think, like, I can totally understand when you're saying it's a fear of the unknown in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And J. Krishnamurti, he says that there is nothing called as fear of unknown. We only fear the things we know. So like, say, for example, we have to walk in the forest at night. If if we don't know anything, we won't be scared. But because we know so much, that oh my God, there could be tigers, there could be lions, there could be crocodiles, there could be snakes. We are scared of the known and not the unknown. That is one thing that's very interesting. And the second thing is that sometimes, and especially here, we are talking about shift in dimensions. Like if I have worked in a corporate and I have felt suffocated or not appreciated, or it feels I'm not doing any good, then I work in an NGO and again I see the power struggle, I see this, and that's frustrating. But here, when we are talking about actually following the inner voice, then I think the power struggle or the frustration won't really affect me if I'm truly doing what I'm called to do. Because then one is not really looking for recognition, one is not looking for appreciation. The work in itself is the joy. But for that too, one has to be intimately connected to oneself, because otherwise those low hanging fruits है ना, कॉर्पोरेट नहीं तो चलो एनजीओ में, बट कर वही रहे हैं। अकाउंटेंट थे तो वहां पे भी अकाउंटेंट है, यहाँ पे भी अकाउंटेंट है, वो बात उसमें जान आती नहीं है, इट डजंट हैव लाइफ इन इटसेल्फ, बिकॉज बट आई वांट टू प्ले सेफ, राइट? I want to be restricted. I want to be limited. Okay, this is what I have studied. This is what I have been doing. So even if I'm changing my world, let me go in this because it's a safer bet. So till I am holding on to safety, till I am caring for my safety, nobody else needs to. The divine doesn't need to, the cosmos doesn't need to. They know I'm playing it safe. But when I stop playing it safe, then they are like, oh, उस बच्चे का ख्याल रखो वो, बहुत कुछ भी कर रहा है टाइप टाइप ना, कि ही इज लिविंग हिज लाइफ, ही इज whatever. So I mean, I just wanted to say that it appears that I might be disappointed if I'm following the same thing under a different title, a different uh, what is it called, sector of work. But if I actually hear, it's like, I know you had shared with me that you like to hear about NDEs and all, you have read it, or so a lot of them that I have read, they come back and their lives are totally changed. Like, someone, one of them I read that they realized that they had to find some organic a pesticide. Somebody started doing research in nitrogen, exploring different things. Like, this is why you were born. You have to explore this, you have to find that, you have to do this. So it's not again those safe bets. It's usually something radical, like, that you're called to do, and there's no outcome you are expecting except the joy that you're getting in doing. Yeah. Anything else before? I think we won't take more today. Okay. We've thankfully completed this long passage. It's really interesting, the choice of words, right? The so-called necessities of the body. We keep sharing this in the circle, right? That if I don't have tea at this time, if I don't have food at this time, my body goes here, my brain goes there. The reality of one's need. If somebody says, कहते चाहिए क्यों? We look at them, क्या बड़ा अजीब है, मैं बोल रही हूँ कि इतना तो मुझे चाहिए होता है, still it's saying reality of one's need. But when one steps back and sees at how trivial these things are for which I'm giving away my life, it's really a good wake up call. And our mother says one is truly very close to the solution. So this is good. So next time we'll take inner state and outer circumstances. Just to give just to see what we have read, more context. I'm just looking for the English translation. Yeah. So we are still on section 1, looking at life and circumstances. We have done power of attitude. The determining power is within. The right spirit, seeking to know, listening to the inner law, the ordinary view of spiritual life. Oh, I didn't even realize it's the opposite. So the first was the ordinary view of spiritual life. Now is the spiritual view of the ordinary life. And next time we'll do inner state and outer circumstances. So in case we would want to go over something that we have already done, we have, online PDF of looking from within. We had shared it. If anybody needs it, I'll share it again. If you want to just refer, go back, or just read what we have done, and if you have any questions, we can take them up anytime at the beginning or in the end. We'll continue with this. So thank you so much for joining in, and just thanking Grace for the opportunity to have this company that we can relish, take in, imbibe, read, reflect on these words together, and sharing the merit, if any, of these collective gatherings of our sadhana with everybody. Not everybody can read, can take in these words, but I can. And may everyone benefit from this, I pray. Thank you so much. Yeah. Good night and